Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. This is AJ. I'm the former wrestler. We've got Dave, the ultimate fan, here with us. As we do every week, our producer Joe likes to make us sound good and makes us look way more professional than we actually are. As always, you can find us on Twitter, that's @FansWorking, Facebook, Working Fans Pod. We've got email where you can reach out to us and please contact us to let us know what you think of the podcast and for any ideas that you might have. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram where you can keep up with us at workingfanswrestling_pod. And then you can now listen to us on all major platforms, including Anchor.fm. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and you can actually check us out on YouTube. Now, it's important when you go onto the Apple Podcasts and YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, let us know what you think so you can help us out and we can continue to do what we love and bring you guys in as fans.
All right, everybody, it's the Working Fans Podcast with Dave and Joe, and today we got big-time wrestling fan, teacher of poetry, lover of poetry. He's got his own book out. We're going to talk about that. Lost City Highway?
Lost City Highway.
Hi, thank you. Joe remembers. And he's my motherfucking friend, Mr. Jake St. John. Jake, how are you, sir?
Pretty good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Man, thanks for coming on. So I'm going to tell the story real quick, Jake, and you can kind of jump in real quick with this. The first time I found...
First, I have to wish you a happy Stone Cold Day.
Oh.
Yeah, happy 316.
Happy 316. That's right, Recorders 316. My man.
I didn't even realize that till I saw you wrote that on Facebook, and I was like, holy shit. How did that not occur to us? Perfect booking, though.
Yeah, it was, right? So, but I don't think other people are going to know this. So, Joe, were you a fan of the PWI magazines? Pro Wrestling Illustrated?
I've read them, yeah.
Okay, all right. You're a little younger, so you had the internet more than we did.
I did a little bit. I would say I'm still kind of technically in that old wrestling magazine bubble.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was necessarily Pro Wrestling Illustrated, because I would get the WWE magazine,
right.
WCW. I got the WCW comic book when they were selling it, so...
So I'm friends with AJ, and I go up to him, and I read the PWI, and I said, hey, this kid from Griswold, Connecticut got his little commentary. I don't know, was it questions, Jake, or was it like a commentary? I remember, you can correct me wrong. It was in PW Inside.
Where fans send in letters, and I sent them in a letter talking about some stuff.
Yes, it was about Psycho Sid and the Hollywood Blondes. That sound right?
Yeah, it was a push for Psycho Sid and the Hollywood Blondes, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. It was like, because there wasn't many of us around that loved wrestling when we were a kid. So when we were in that age group, I'm like, oh, this guy likes wrestling and he's in my area?
Yeah, that's usually when
I carried the magazine around with me for weeks.
I mean, that's pretty cool. Yeah, you got it printed. I was definitely jealous, man.
I guess that's probably the first time I ever was published, was that magazine, Pro Wrestling Illustrated.
Yeah, right. True. And you and AJ had a class together, right? Maybe?
Yeah, AJ and I had art together, and then you and me and Zach and Flynn, we had early child development where we had to watch kids.
Yeah, right. That was the following year. And I think before that happened, you and AJ hit it off. I told him about you, and then he said, I think I have a class with that kid. And so you guys hit it off. And then we ended up all going over to your house to watch the Slamboree 94 pay-per-view.
That's right, yeah.
Which stole the show was, I want to say for me, was Tully Blanchard and Terry Funk, because they were older but still tore the fucking house down, and it was like a wild...
that was probably the best match, yeah.
Yeah, my memory's pretty good with some of this shit, so... So what was, because I don't remember if I ever asked you this, but maybe you can tell me, what was some of your earliest memories of wrestling, and what got you into wrestling?
What got me into wrestling was actually, you remember Michael's Market in Jewish City?
Yes.
Where Walgreens is or whatever now?
Yep.
I would go shopping with my mother there, and I remember one day I don't know if it was raining out or whatever, but she told me to go get a magazine, or I think they had books too, like Party Boy books or something. Yeah, nothing crazy, but so I was looking in the magazine section, and I found it wasn't Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I want to say it was like Wrestling Superstars or something like that, and it was a big glossy magazine, and Lex Luger was on the cover, and I'd never seen him before. Like, it was Lex Luger on the cover, and there was a small inset photograph of the Road Warriors, and there was nobody from WWF. It was all these guys I'd never seen before.
Right.
So I grabbed the magazine and bought that, and then I had a list of all the wrestling shows that were on, and I went through the TV guide of the actual magazine and found, like, I think it was NWA, WCW at the time, something
Right.
like that, and so I got up on a Saturday morning and watched that, and I thought I got hooked. It was that one magazine, because there was all these guys. I'd only seen maybe one or two WWF shows at the time, and
Right.
then seeing this magazine of a whole different world, that's what got me turned on. Found everything out.
Yeah, that was a good time in wrestling, man. I want to say we also had maybe the Great Muta was still doing his thing around that time in WCW.
Yeah, yeah, it was about, I'd say, about a year before Muta, probably, because I remember going back probably, I remember late 86, 87, I'd say.
Yeah.
But it was that one magazine that gave me the bug. Like, that's when I just started watching nonstop.
So you had early memories probably of WrestleMania 3 with Hogan, Andre, Steamboat Savage and stuff too, maybe.
Yeah. I remember my dad, he'd get the newspaper, and he'd always tell me if there was Saturday night's main event, the wrestling results, or I remember waking up and asking him if they had the results of WrestleMania, and he read all of them.
Wow. It's so funny, like, talking to you about this stuff, like, you know, talking about the TV guide and the newspaper. Like, a lot of kids probably going to listen to this and be like, what the fuck is that shit?
I guess it's probably 75, 80 by now.
Yeah, right? Before we get into some of the stuff you're doing now, Gary the Barber in Jute City, all right?
Yeah.
You guys knew him, and we all ended up going to SummerSlam, like, on the same trip.
Yep.
And you guys were giving me shit about this. I was telling them the other night, like, yes, we went to SummerSlam 98 on a school bus to Madison Square Garden, New York. I think the driver fell asleep on the way home, but we all made it.
Yep.
How did you know Gary? Like, what was your relationship? Did you just cut your hair, or how did that come about?
I'll tell you a couple stories about Gary. Gary is a cousin of mine, and that's how he started cutting hair. He was a cousin of mine, so I knew him before. And then I was into wrestling. Zach was into wrestling, and we talk. Whenever I get my haircut, we talk about it. And Gary was a huge Randy Savage fan, and he got a ticket to go up to Worcester, Worcester or Warwick. It was Warwick. And we went to see one of the shows. Terry Von Erich was on it. I think he wrestled Mr. Perfect. That was the first show that Saba Simba wasn't even a character yet on TV, and he came out. Had no idea, like, was wondering why Tony Atlas was dressed like that. And so the whole thing was Gary bought these tickets with the impression that we would get to shake hands and get autographs from Macho Man. So we were waiting, like, they kept saying, like, intermission, then after the show. So finally after the show, we got to see, we got up to the fence, and somebody brought Randy Savage out, and Gary was talking to him and everything, and Gary was like, oh, everybody came up to see you, and Gary shook his hand, Mox pulled him in real tight, grabbed his hand, gave him, he said he thought he broke 4 of his fingers. He said, don't do this anymore, man.
Wow.
So after that, he became an Ultimate Warrior fan.
Wow.
My only memory of Gary was I'm friends with the Lucases, so I was watching a pay-per-view over at their house, and I swear Gary
We probably
came
had the same show. I used to watch at their house all the time.
Yep. And I remember Gary came over dressed as the Ultimate Warrior one time, and it was just the funniest thing.
I remember going to a show with Jake, and Gary has his family owns a funeral home too, if I remember correctly. It had to be.
I don't know if it's the same family, now possibly distant.
Well, okay, but you can explain this because he showed up like in a hearse and came out like the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Like a setup. So,
Yes, he did.
Right. So that's how he met us. And that was like the first time I ever think I actually saw and met Gary. And I'm like, whoa, this guy's a character.
Yeah, that's some
He
showmanship.
came running up my driveway dressed as the Ultimate Warrior one day.
That's hilarious, man.
But the other story I was going to tell you about him was I break this story out every now and then. My students at school is how I became very good, close personal friends with Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about this anyway because he did an autograph signing at Chute City Mall, right?
Yes, he did.
And he got his haircut. Okay, you tell the story.
So it was SummerSlam, right? Where it was The Rock and Triple H for the IC title.
Yeah, ladder match. Yes.
Yeah, ladder match. So the following week was I can't remember his name, but there used to be a sports shop down the hallway from the barber shop.
Oh, CNS
And-
Sports.
Yeah, CNS Sports. And he would bring in Steve, I think his name was, would bring in all different wrestlers and everything, and he brought Conan in and whatever, and Val Venus, but he brought The Rock in right after the SummerSlam, and they needed like a place for him to hang out and everything, drink coffee and relax. So Gary had like I think that there was stairs in the back that they could bring him in without him having to go through the crowd and the line and everything. So he came in. We had coffee, and his wife at the time was pregnant with their first daughter. And yeah, he was a really cool guy. He brought Mark Henry with him, and I remember I was sitting on the couch with Mark Henry, and man, I've never felt so small. He was massive.
Yeah.
Real cool guy, soft-spoken. But yeah, I got a picture with The Rock, and Gary took a picture cutting his hair, and he's a real good guy. I mean, he hadn't hit like he obviously isn't what he is now, but just a real cool, humble kid.
Now, was there a joke or something that somebody made? I kind of remember you telling me a story, maybe, I could be wrong, that The Rock said, hey, why don't you give Mark a haircut? He likes it or something like that, and Mark Henry kind of growled jokingly.
Yeah, Mark, he didn't talk much at all. He just kind of, it was like real soft mumbles, and I don't know that he had the confidence that he has now, and he didn't want. And it was early in the morning too, so he might have not been ready to drive The Rock around. And
Sure.
he was a pretty quiet guy. He was nice to me. I talked to him briefly. I was pretty scared to approach him. He seemed not too thrilled to be awake or whatever.
Yeah, he's an intimidating presence, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Mark Henry says
But
we're going to do
yeah,
something.
I mean, he talked to us kids and everything.
I get a feel like Mark Henry tells you we're going to do something today. You just go along whatever Mark Henry has planned.
Exactly.
Yeah, my buddy Josh isn't even a wrestling fan anymore, but he has a picture with Mark Henry from that day.
Yeah.
And he's even got a Polaroid with Sonny that I imagine is from those times hanging out with Gary and them.
Yeah, I actually went over
Josh. I remember Josh was big into Sonny, and he was big into Gold Dust. He loved Gold Dust when he first showed up.
That's awesome. I remember going over their house once to watch a SummerSlam. I want to say it's the one where it was the second ladder match, maybe with Razor and Shawn. It was like in Pittsburgh.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know where we watched it, but we also watched, it might have been their house, but it was like the Survivor Series where Brett beat Diesel and Diesel jackknifed him afterwards. Yep.
Yeah. Was that, I remember one, it was Ahmed Johnson's debut, and he like slammed Yokozuna or something like that, and gave out the biggest high-pitched squeal. That was at Lucas's house, because I remember we were just rolling on the ground, like the noise that Ahmed Johnson made when he slammed him.
Dude, I still remember him making that fucking noise too. That taunts me sometimes. We want to move on here a little bit. Somewhere we got disconnected a little bit because, you know, obviously life happens, and so you developed an interest for poetry, and that's how you got your book out and everything. How did that happen? When did that happen? And give me some insight on that.
So I used to write song lyrics growing up. in high school and everything, I would write really terrible songwriting lyrics. And I was always into Jim Morrison and the Doors, going back to the Lost Boys movie. They had a couple of People Are Strange, and they had the picture of Jim Morrison. So the Doors were always something I was interested in. And I was at school up at Utah one day, and really into the Doors, really into music and everything at the time. And there was a used bookstore up at campus, and I bought a copy. I think it was Nobody Here Gets Out Alive. It was a biography on Jim Morrison, and not a very factually based autobiography, but they had a bunch of different books that Jim read and different music that he listened to. And so I went back to this bookstore on campus, and I found a lot of the authors that were referenced in this book, and they were like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac. So I started reading Jack Kerouac on the road. Now this is like right when the internet first kind of started getting what it is today. So I was able to find a lot of information online about these poets and writers, and like I kept a journal online and would jot things down here or there, but I really didn't know any poets. I didn't really know what good poetry was, except for Jim Morrison. So through that book, I got turned on to all these other poets, and then I started writing. It was in New Year's, maybe 2001, that I really said, I'm going to try and do something with this, and started taking it serious, and started reading and finding out about poetry and new poetry. And then my friend Mike, he also got into Kerouac because he was into the traveling, which we both were. So we ended up going cross country, and while we were going cross country, I was journaling and things like that. I wrote this poem called American Stranger in Mike's apartment in Las Vegas. It was like 4 a.m, just hot, sweaty, and can't sleep or anything. And I remember I just wrote it out real quick. And that eventually, when I got back to the East Coast, it was the first poem that I ever got published. So it's been cool.
Nice. And then how long after that before you got the book published then?
That was back in the fall of 2004. I was in line at a coffee shop with a friend of mine, and they were real supportive of my poetry, and I said, this will be the year. This year, it was right around New Year's, so I was like, going into this new year, it must have been 2005, I'm going to read poetry in person. I'm going to get out, and I'm not going to be shy anymore. I'll do it. So we get up to the counter, and as I'm about to pay, she says, I guess you're reading next weekend. And I look down, there's this wild flyer about poetry open mic every Sunday. And so I went the next week, and I met this guy, Tom Weigel, who this poet that was just unbelievable. I mean, this guy had this energy I'd never felt before, and we became quick friends. He was quite a bit older, not quite, 30 years or so, and he became my mentor, and he helped introduce me to some other poets and things like that, and then started publishing in different magazines. I had a couple of small limited edition, like 30 or 40 copies, sold books here or there, real small press, like do-it-yourself, punk rock type magazines and books. And then this book came about in late 2018. I had gotten published in this magazine out in Mystic a couple of times called Out of Hour. This editor, Sarah Page, she ran a magazine in Mystic, Connecticut, and then relocated out to San Francisco, kept the magazine going. I got a couple more poems placed, and then one day I got an email from this kid, John Brombacher, and he was talking about my poetry and how he enjoyed it and everything, and how he was starting a press. And so we kind of talked over the years, nothing came of it, and then maybe 4 or 5 years later, I realized that I had a stack of poems, like 15 years worth almost of poems that had been published and really solidified. And John and I had always stayed in touch, and he really wanted to do a book, and so it just kind of came together like that, just by chance, him catching my poem in a magazine out in Los Angeles, and that's how it happened. I mean, it got published in San Francisco, and he was down in L.A. It just kind of fate took over, I guess.
That's nice, man. That's cool. Let me ask you now. You've done poetry live on stage too, right?
Yeah, on stage, yeah, I've done readings all around Connecticut. Done a lot of feature readings. I did a friend of mine videotaped me because there was a festival out in Leicester, England, a couple years back, and I had video about 10 minutes worth that I read and sent out to this Beat Generation festival out in England, so that was pretty wild.
I was going to ask you, so do you get like a nervous energy before you get up there sometimes, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter if there's 5 people in the crowd or 500. I mean, I'd be lucky to be in front of 500 people, but it doesn't matter how. For me, at least, for how many people, a lot of nervous energy, a lot of pacing, a lot of wandering around, and I don't know why. It's just how it always is. I keep it bottled up, and it's different.
No, we get it. I mean, there's certain, obviously we're all friends here, but like there's certain times like we've interviewed like Al Snow or somebody, and like I know minutes before, like I'm like I got like a nervous but kind of excited too energy, like man, I can't wait to see how this fucking goes, you know, like I kind of want to jump into it and get over with, but I'm also like, let's do this, you know, like I don't want to wait around, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just want to jump in. I want to get to it, and
Right. Let the chips fall where they fell, but we're gonna find out, right?
I feel like that was a lot of the early interviews with us, where we get like real nervous before, and it's like, fuck, I don't know what to expect.
I do think, right, because we do this almost on a weekly basis. We're a little more relaxed, but I will say this: if tomorrow we scored a fucking interview with, all right, I'm not even just the biggest fan of the guy, but let's say we scored an interview with fucking Batista or something. Like, he's okay, but you know what I mean? I'd be fucking like, holy shit, we got fucking Batista. Like, we can't fuck this up.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
So, So, I think there's levels to it. I mean, I think with anything, repetition, if you do something all the time, but... The Lost City Highway, now, did that name come along with this road trip?
Yeah, I mean, getting the book together, getting the poems organized and edited down, and John was real great about keeping the integrity of the poem, and any editing decisions, he didn't do anything until I signed off on it. And the one thing that neither of us could figure out was the title of the book. Like, I was going through taking titles of poems and then taking phrases, and I was texting out to a lot of different poet friends, John Greiner, Dave Kennedy, and I was like, what about this title? What about this title? And every time they're like, nah, it doesn't mean anything. That's weak. You're giving this image. It shouldn't be like that. And like John would shoot me a text like, what do you think about this? I was like, I don't know. And I'd send it to him. He's like, I don't know. And then finally, like, we were kicking around some different phrases as far as having a highway and then cities, and I don't remember how exactly the title came about, but we're talking like a good month at least trying to figure out just the title of the book. Like, we were ready to go. We were ready to do it. And we should have a title for the book. We didn't know what to call it. I'm very, very particular about titling poems and titling books. Like, everything has to make sense. It can't be all just grab a title and go with it. I'm very particular that everything be specific and important. So the title of the book was, we couldn't go forward until I felt very happy with it. And eventually when Lost City Highway clicked, we both were kind of like, yeah, that's the title right there. And because a lot of the poems are road trips and poems when I was living in New London and things like that. And so it all kind of tied up 15 years where the poems were written.
We got a fan question for you today. Our boy Mike Flynn had messaged us with some questions for you. I'm going to hit you with them. He's got 3 of them. I think you saw some of these. Your feelings on the Raven character and kind of the whole Edgar Allan Poe persona. What you thought about that?
Raven, I think Raven is just one of the greatest characters ever in wrestling. I mean, he was the Jim Morrison of pro wrestling. Just fantastic. I mean, I loved Scotty Anthony at the time, and I loved his work going back to like Global, and just for him to go from that big Flamingo character to real life Raven was just
dude.
one of my favorite characters ever.
I'm so glad you said Scotty Anthony, because that's the first time I saw him too in Global Wrestling Federation. And there was something about, I watched a match where he just turned it up a notch and he started doing all his moves really fast. And I'm like, oh, I like this guy. And then I want to say he had the Scotty Flamingo thing in WCW, and I rooted for him. I think he had the light heavyweight title briefly. And
that's where I became a fan of it.
Yeah.
And, like, it blew my mind years later that Raven was Scotty.
So then we go to Johnny
That's
Polo.
right, yeah. He went to WCW before, and then Johnny Polo, that's what it was, because I was thinking Scotty Flamingo and Johnny Polo, and I wanted to call him Johnny Flamingo.
Yes.
That's right. He had that denim jacket with the pink fringe on the arms.
Yes. That he was managed, and when he got to WWE, he was managing Adam Bomb as Johnny Polo.
Yep.
And he used to cut
And
this
then
promo
Quebec.
with the Quebecers too, right. But he would always cut this promo with Adam Bomb, I remember, when he talked about picking him up for like the power bomb or choke slam. He'd be like, well, up you go and down you stay. And I was just like, oh, that fucking was like just so good for me as a kid. And I remember reading about Raven in the magazines, and I was like, who's this fucking Raven guy? Who's Raven? Yeah. And then when I saw him, and I'm like, holy shit! You know, it was such a transformation.
Yeah, it was. It was the tattoos, the scowl, because he was always a happy-go-lucky goofball character.
Right.
And, man, there was just something different. There was really nothing like that in wrestling at the time.
No.
ECW was just starting out, but he really ushered in that real-life character, that real building off who they were in real life, because it sounds like he was having a tough time himself at that period of his life, and he just, Raven was unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. All right, so other question, too. We have two more questions. How would you rate the poetry of the genius, Lanny Poffo?
I would probably...
On a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
We're not doing the melter. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would put it on a frisbee and I would throw it in an opposite direction.
Okay. So, Genius isn't getting it done on the poetry side or the wrestling side, really, because he really didn't. Out of the father and the brother, clearly Lanny was not having the most successful career out of them. So
No, and I'm sure he's a wonderful guy. I feel bad. I'm telling stories about Macho Man breaking my cousin's fingers and Mark Henry intimidating all of us, but they really were cool guys. They just, it was Macho Man. You want to have a story. Yeah. Macho Man tried to physically assault you.
Damn right. All right. And then the last question we got from Mike was, as a big fan of Jim Morrison, what are some of your thoughts on John Morrison?
I was just talking about this the other night, not as much John Morrison, but season 1 of Lucha Underground, where John Morrison was Johnny Mundo.
Yeah. Where
he came off as like a cheap B-level movie actor, action actor, Steven Seagal type, like just a cheesy actor. I just thought he was wonderful. Thinking of him as Johnny Morrison just reminds me of The Miz, and it just gets me mad.
I will say that that Lucha Underground, man, that really caught on with me. Like, I remember watching some episodes kind of haphazardly, and then next thing I know, I'm getting like enthralled in this. I'm like, well, this is completely different than anything else out there, and like we're killing people, we're having aliens. It was like a comic book.
Time travelers.
Yeah, comic book / wrestling sci-fi.
Yeah. I thought it was great. The first season 1, season 2, first half of season 2. I thought there was nothing like it. It was really pretty creative.
Yeah, with that Vampiro Pentagon season finale match, that was something to see.
Yeah, they beat the shit out of each other. Well, we're going to keep you around later for the 531. Is there anything you want to promote before we end this segment, though, Jake?
The book's still available on Amazon, Lost City Highway by Jake St. John. That's pretty much it, guys. Don't have too much going on right now other than the book and just getting through the next couple of weeks.
All right, my man. Yeah, hopefully we all get through the next couple of weeks with no issues. And life gets back to a little normalcy, when we can maybe watch wrestling with crowds again, hopefully at some point in the next month or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys
Get
looking
back to
forward to
normal.
a Raw tonight from an empty Performance Center where you're bringing in Stone Cold, you're bringing in
Okay.
a couple other
Undertaker.
people.
Stone Cold, Undertaker are going to be in front of an empty arena show tonight.
You're really popping the boys with that one.
Jesus. Yeah, that's what we did before we even go. We'll just talk about that for a second because that's a great point. Like, it is, and it's not just WWE. I mean, AEW is doing it this week too. They're going to have an empty arena show.
Yeah.
UFC just did. And we don't know if these guys are still going to be able to have shows. And I know Vince is getting a lot of heat for not canceling Mania yet, but there is talk that I guess there's some insurance thing that he's not going to get paid if he cancels it. And I gotta tell you, like, I don't know if I would if you can tell me I could wait another week or two and they're gonna pay for fucking everything, I'd probably like, all right, the show's still on as far as
I
I
think about it though. Owen died mid-show and they kept going.
Oh
So
yeah, this
is the
motherfucker ain't
virus-
stopping anyway. Yeah. I mean, if you tell
I saw a headline today that the town have to step in and shut it down.
Oh no shit. Yeah, he's not. If they don't, they must not know Vince McMahon if they're waiting for this guy to
Exactly. It's Vince McMahon. Yeah, you expect him to do one, and he's not going to do it.
Nah, he don't give a fuck. He will put that show on an empty arena and book himself against God again and do it like a main event and say, this is what we're doing.
No, he's gonna put himself against the coronavirus.
The corona, he will.
Beat it, and then it's gonna be fake news.
Don't
when,
give him
like,
any ideas.
yeah.
Yeah, have Donald Trump, our president, as special referee or some shit. Oh, man.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the America screw job.
Yeah,
at that point.
don't. If whoever has to make this decision, the governor or if it's the mayor, I don't know, in Tampa, whoever has to make, just make it already because Vince ain't fucking
just do
doing it. You're wasting your time.
Yeah, I gotta know whether to buy those shows on Fight TV too. I don't want to pay the money now and then go through the claims process with Fight. Look, I bought Joey Ryan's Penis Party 2. It is not happening. I would like my money back. And if you put it back on the bill, can you put it under something different?
Okay. On that note, that's going to do it for this segment. Jake's going to stick around with us. This is the Working Fans Podcast.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.